Under the dim glow of the rust-streaked station lamps, 19-year-old Marin Hayes curled herself into a tight bundle beside the railroad tracks, hugging the torn straps of her backpack as if they were the last threads keeping her from completely unraveling. She had been sleeping here for 3 nights, her body stiff from the cold and her mind buzzing with the same looping memories. Her stepfather's booze, soured shouting, the crash of a lamp against the wall, the trembling moment when she realized she had to run or be swallowed whole by that house forever. The tracks were the only place, far enough from it all yet close enough to feel like she had not vanished from the world. Freight trains thundered past her, rattling her bones and scattering grit into her hair, but she welcomed the noise. Anything was better than the silence of being unwanted. On the 4th night, when she had just begun to drift into a fragile sleep, footsteps shuffled across the gravel, slow and uneven, like someone carrying the weight of 1,000 miles. She jolted upright, clutching her bag, and saw an old man with a wiry gray beard, sun-beaten skin, and a heavy denim coat patched at the elbows. He paused a respectful distance away, lifting his hands so she wouldn't think he meant harm. "Evenin', kid," he said in a rasp softened by kindness. "Cold night to be sleeping this close to steel." Marin didn't answer. Her heart hammered in warning, but the man simply nodded as if he understood every fear trembling through her. He lowered himself onto a crate near the tracks, setting down a battered army duffel that looked older than her. "Name's Grady," he said. "Been walking these rails most of my life." She studied him, his weathered boots, the frayed necklace made of flattened pennies, the eyes that held both exhaustion and a surprising gentleness. "You don't have to talk," he added softly, "but maybe you shouldn't be alone out here." The words cracked something inside her, something she had kept sealed tight for so long. Tears burned her eyes, and she looked away so he wouldn't see, but of course he did. "Got a fire going under the old signal tower," he said, motioning toward the shadows. "Warm, safe, lot safer than the trains blowin' past your ear." She hesitated, fighting the instinct to run from everyone and everything, yet something about the way he waited, not pushing, not demanding, made her rise slowly to her feet. They walked in silence to a tucked-away corner beneath the rusted tower, where Grady had built a modest camp, a ring of stones, a flickering fire, and a blanket spread over a wooden pallet. He handed her a tin mug filled with something warm. "Just tea," he promised. She sipped, the heat unraveling the knot in her chest. Grady didn't ask questions. He simply hummed a tune that sounded like an old railway lullaby while feeding scraps of wood into the fire. After a long while, Marin said, "I didn't know where else to go." He nodded, as if that sentence alone told him everything. "Tracks'll take you somewhere," he murmured, "but sometimes you gotta decide if you're runnin' from something or runnin' toward something." She stared into the flames, remembering the way her stepfather had slammed the door behind her, shouting that she wouldn't make it a week on her own. Maybe I won't, she thought. Maybe he was right, but Grady's presence steadied her, rooted her. When the fire dimmed, he offered her the blanket. "Take it. I've slept through colder." She tried to refuse, but he insisted with a gentle firmness, so she lay down while he sat guard, humming faintly to the rhythm of distant rails. Over the next few days, a strange companionship formed between them. Grady showed her where to refill water safely, how to heat canned food over embers, how to read the chalk symbols left by other drifters on abandoned freight cars, little codes that meant friendly, danger, food ahead, or shelter this way. They were invisible to ordinary travelers, but to rail riders, they were a hidden language of survival. Marin found herself listening to Grady's stories, how he had left home at 17 after a tragedy he never fully explained, how he had worked odd jobs in towns he barely remembered, how he had seen kindness and cruelty along the rails in equal measure. "Got no family left," he said one evening as the fire crackled low, "but life keeps putting people in my path. Some need a meal, some need a warning, and some," He glanced at her gently. Need someone to remind him they're made of stronger stuff than the world tried to break. Marin swallowed hard because no one had ever spoken to her that way, with belief instead of doubt. One afternoon, when a train slowed for track maintenance, Grady showed her how to approach safely, pointing out which cars were empty and which were too risky. But when she stepped back, clutching her backpack, he noticed the fear in her eyes. "You ain't gotta go anywhere yet," he said. "Nobody's pushing you onto nothing." She exhaled shakily. I don't know what I'm doing." Grady smiled, a tired, fatherly smile that warmed her more than the fire ever could. "That's the thing about being young," he said. "You're allowed not to know." That night, Marin finally told him everything. Her mother's silence, her stepfather's threats, the bruises she hid at school, the night she ran when she realized the house would never be safe again. Grady listened without interrupting once. His jaw clenched with quiet anger, but his voice stayed soft. "You did right getting out," he said. "Takes courage to walk away from what hurts, more courage than most folks ever find." She wiped her tears with the sleeve of her hoodie, feeling lighter than she had in years. The next morning, a social worker and 2 officers arrived at the station, responding to a report from a shopkeeper who had seen Marin sleeping near the tracks earlier in the week. Panic surged through her. She didn't want to be sent back. Grady squeezed her shoulder. "Let me talk first," he whispered. He approached them calmly, explaining that he had found her alone and scared, that she had been harmed at home, that she wasn't a runaway for trouble, but a runaway for survival. The social worker, a gentlewoman named M.S. Delaney, knelt beside Marin and spoke to her with a kindness that reminded her faintly of Grady's. For the first time, someone in authority listened, truly listened. When they confirmed that her stepfather was being investigated and that she wouldn't be forced to return, Marin sobbed with pure relief. Grady stepped back, giving her space, his expression soft but shadowed, as if preparing for their paths to split. M.S. Delaney arranged a temporary foster placement with a couple who lived 2 towns over. Before Marin climbed into the car, she turned to Grady, her voice trembling. "I don't want this to be goodbye." Grady adjusted the strap of his duffel and gave her a faint, wistful grin. "Kid, sometimes the people we meet on the road ain't meant to stay forever. They're just meant to walk with us till we can stand again." She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his coat. He hugged her back with surprising strength. "You ain't alone anymore," he murmured, "and you never had to be." When she pulled away, her eyes were wet, but her spine felt straighter, steadier. Grady tipped his hat and stepped onto the gravel, heading toward the tracks with the easy rhythm of someone who had walked them all his life. Weeks later, settled into a warm house with a quiet bedroom and 2 kind foster parents, Marin would sometimes sit by her window and listen to the distant whistle of trains echoing through the hills. Each time she whispered a small thank you into the night. Thank you for the rails that had carried her away from fear. Thank you for the stranger who became her anchor. Thank you for the moment he spoke the words that changed everything. You don't have to be alone. And though she knew Grady had drifted onward, leaving only memories and the faint smell of campfire smoke in her mind, she also knew that their brief crossing had saved her life, and that somewhere out there, the old man with the patched coat and gentle eyes was warming his hands by another fire, humming a railway lullaby for the next lost soul who needed someone to care.